Welcome back. So every year I like to look at the goaltending around the NHL and ask the question of, so which goalies are going to move before next season? And it doesn't feel like this offseason we're going to see necessarily as much movement, but maybe we will. The jersey I chose for this might end up being sort of the way Utah looks, right? Because that's sort of like a Yeti right there. You've got the black. This blue is very similar to Utah, so if you're a fan of the ice, you might be a fan of whatever the team name ends up being for Utah. It's interesting too because one of the 20 names that they initially had was Ice. So looking at the jersey, it's similar. All right, so we'll go in alphabetical order. Apologies to Winnipeg and Washington and Vancouver and Vegas and all that. But we'll start with Anaheim. John Gibson may very well be on the move. $6.4 million cap hit till 2027. We know the salary cap's going up. The problem is Gibson had a rough year. So odds are if Anaheim's going to move him, they'll probably have to retain some of that salary cap money, even with the cap going up. Dostal, to me, looked ready to be the starter. $812,500 cap hit for one more year. He's a UFA, or RFA, I should say, next summer. They do have Klang, Clara are two young goaltenders that they have in the system that maybe you bring up. Odds are, though, they probably find a veteran backup goaltender to bring in to back up Dostal, or maybe have a 1A, 1B situation in Anaheim. Or maybe when you trade Gibson, you get a goaltender back. For Boston, and it's weird not having Arizona on the board. It's just bizarre. It's going to take me a little while to get used to that for sure. So in Boston, we know that Ullmark's probably on his way out. It's a $5 million cap hit for one more year, and they have two young goaltenders who are both, in the case of Swayman, he's the starter. He's a restricted free agent. Bussy, restricted free agent as well, also 25 years of age, so if they feel like he's going to be an NHL goaltender, this would be the offseason to decide they're going that direction. I don't know if Boston's going to go with those two goalies, but I wouldn't be necessarily all that surprised if they did. Ullmark probably on his way out, and I hope the goalie hug survives. I do. I hope the goalie hug survives. Maybe Ullmark takes it somewhere else. Maybe that becomes a thing around the NHL, right? In Buffalo, Luukkonen and Levi very likely to be the goaltenders. Luukkonen's a restricted free agent this summer. Levi, $925,000 cap hit for one more year, and then he's a restricted free agent. So there's going to be some money caught up with Luukkonen, and then next summer with Levi. And so a large part of what Kevyn Adams' job is going to be is deciding, is this your tandem? Do you want to trade one for a more veteran goaltender? Or is it, nope, we're going to have two really good young goaltenders and we're going to go from there? That's probably what they're going to do, but we'll see. Calgary. So Markstrom's name's back on the trade market. I don't know if he gets moved this summer, but probably does. $6 million cap hit for 2 more years. Vladar, $2.2 million cap hit for 1 more year. Vladar had a rough year. And then there's Wolf, right? Wolf came up, and I thought he played well enough, especially towards the end of the season, that he will be signing an extension, I would think, this summer. He's a restricted free agent, and it's probably going to be Vladar and Wolf this fall, unless they decide to trade Vladar instead of Markstrom, but I don't think that's going to happen. Carolina, there's been a lot of goaltenders, but still a lot of discussion about whether or not they have a goalie that can win for them in the playoffs. Freddie Anderson, $3.4 million cap hit for 2 more years. Kochetkov has a $2 million cap hit for 3 more years. Kochetkov is probably the starter this coming season. And Spencer Martin has a league minimum $775,000 cap hit for 1 more year. Antti Raanta is an unrestricted free agent. Very likely he's done in Carolina anyways. He ended up spending a lot of time in the minors. But it'll probably be Kochetkov and Anderson to start the season. Maybe they keep Martin as the number 3. Maybe they waive him, get him through waivers, and have him be the guy they're calling up next season when they need him. For Chicago, Mrazek has 2 more years at $4.25 million. He's given them very good goaltending. Soderblom, $962,500 cap hit for 1 more year, and then he's a restricted free agent next summer. In the event that they decide to go with a young guy, they have Stauber, they have Comesso as well. Comesso, of course, seen as the future starter in Chicago, so we'll see how that goes and what their tandem looks like this fall. My guess is it's still going to be Mrazek and Soderblom. For Colorado, Georgiev, $3.4 million for another year. You get a bargain when it comes to how many wins he gets during the regular season, but I guarantee there will be a lot of discussion about, is he the goaltender that's going to get them back to the Stanley Cup? Annunen, $837,500 cap hit until 2026. He's a restricted free agent that summer. And I would say he played quite well the second half of the season, has earned himself maybe a few more starts next year. But there will be discussion about Colorado's tandem and whether or not that's a tandem that can win you a Stanley Cup. I would think over the summer that'll probably come up a few times. Elvis wanted out of Columbus during the season. It didn't happen. I would think that hasn't changed. But his cap hit of $5.4 million plus putting up below average numbers for the last couple of years won't help his case for getting moved out, and won't help Columbus get much back in trade. Plus, the cap, that $5.4 million is until 2027. So they'll probably have to retain if they trade him. Tarasov, $1.05 million for another year. He's a restricted free agent next summer, and I thought he outplayed Merzlikins. And then there's Greaves. Greaves had a good run in the playoffs for Cleveland, and he looks ready. He had some good games during the regular season as well at the NHL level. And yeah, so it's probably, I would think, going to be Tarasov and Greaves this fall. But where does Elvis go? Who will take that contract? Is there a team that can maybe turn him around? Utah's turned around goaltenders when they were in Arizona. Can Utah continue what Arizona did? And then you've got Dallas. Ottinger and Wedgwood. Wedgwood's a UFA this summer. They have Matt Murray, who's a restricted free agent, but he's 26. I don't know if Matt Murray necessarily comes up and ends up being the backup. Jake Ottinger's due a major raise next summer. He makes $4 million for one more year, but he's a restricted free agent next summer. So Dallas really does kind of have the hammer in those negotiations. Although Ottinger, I would think, probably just one more year from UFA status. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what he gets and for how long. Detroit, a lot of discussion about their goaltending this past year. Ville Husso's got another year left on that $4.75 million cap hit. Alex Lyon, it's a $900,000 cap hit for another year for him. Reimer is a UFA, and again, if you're looking for a young goaltender who might come up, Kasa's there, but highly unlikely that Kasa necessarily comes up and plays next season. But yeah, Detroit may very well be one of those teams that's in the market for a bona fide number one goaltender. Lyon played well for large stretches, but he's not really starter. Husso gets hurt often, and again, Reimer's going to market, so yeah, they may be in the market for a new goaltender. John Gibson, maybe that kind of goaltender. Maybe he can have a bounce back in Detroit. And then you've got the Oilers. So currently in the Stanley Cup Final, Skinner, $2.6 million cap hit till 2026. I think he's absolutely great value at that. Pickard's an unrestricted free agent this summer, so his play with the Oilers this year, I would think, leads to him re-signing with the Oilers. I'd be kind of surprised if he doesn't. But since he's shown he can still play at the NHL level, I think he will get a contract this summer in the event that he doesn't extend with the Oilers. Campbell, $5 million cap hit until 2027. That contract's still a problem. They will definitely look to move it this summer. Does anybody take it? We'll see. Florida, of course, Bobrovsky, the $10 million cap hit for 2 more years. At the time it was signed, it was seen as way too expensive. And the reality is Bobrovsky, Bobrovsky's been pretty fantastic the last couple of years. Spencer Knight, a $4.5 million cap hit until 2026. He's a restricted free agent at that point. I would think Spencer Knight comes up this fall and ends up being the backup again. Stolarz is an unrestricted free agent this summer. His play this year should lead to him getting a raise this summer. Does Florida hold on to him, look to move Knight, or do you bring Knight up and make him your 1B behind Bobrovsky, who is 35 years of age, so at some point soon you got to think they'll be looking in another direction, but in the event they do win a Stanley Cup, it makes you feel a lot better about whatever goes on after that. For LA, Riddick's the only one with a contract. $1 million contract for next season, and then he's a UFA after that. Talbot's a UFA, Copley's a UFA, and Portillo is a restricted free agent. So not anybody signed. Maybe LA ends up looking for a starter. I don't think Markstrom moves within the division, but sure, why not? Or hey, Gibson could just move down the road, go to LA. I don't think that happens. Minnesota, Gustafsson, $3.75 million cap hit until 2026. His name comes up a lot in trade rumors because he had a rough season. Marc-Andre Fleury, $2.5 million cap hit for 1 more year. It's probably his last. But then there's Wallstedt. Wallstedt looks ready. So Gustafsson probably ends up moving this summer. He's still young. I think at that cap hit, somebody takes him on. And then you end up with Fleury and Wallstedt as your tandem in Minnesota. Montreal. Montembeault, $3.15 million cap hit until 2027. He's worth it. And Primo at $890,000 for 1 more year, and then he's a restricted free agent next summer. That's a pretty good deal. You're paying $4 million for your goaltending, and you're getting decent goaltending out of it. So I don't think there's anything to complain about there. Nashville. So with Arizona moving out of the league and Utah coming in, it now means Nashville's in the first half alphabetically. They're the 16th team. It's weird. Saros, one more year at $5 million. There's a lot of talk about the extension. He very likely signs this summer. What that cap hit's going to look like. Lankinen's a UFA this summer. Askarov is looking ready. So Askarov probably comes up and ends up being the backup next year to Saros. And Lankinen on the market, I think, gets a pretty decent contract from somebody somewhere to be the backup because he was good for Nashville this year. New Jersey, Jake Allen, the only one signed currently. $1.925 million is the cap hit for New Jersey with him. 2025 is when that's up, so it's one more year for Allen. He probably ends up being the backup, but what do you do if you're New Jersey? So Kakinen, unrestricted free agent this summer. I don't think he stays there because you've got Dawes and Schmid. Both of them are restricted free agents. At times, both goaltenders have looked pretty good at the NHL level, and at times they haven't. So there's definitely some answers that are needed for New Jersey when it comes to next season's goaltending, because let's just say they do get Markstrom. Then Markstrom and Allen are your tandem, and you have Dawes and Schmid, who may very well be good backups at the NHL level now. They could probably be good backups now. And so do you just keep them in Utica, or do you trade them out for something else you need somewhere else? Because again, there are definitely teams who would probably take on Dawes or Schmid in the event that they became available. I'm not saying they trade both. They're not going to trade both, but maybe one or the other goes. Because again, I think both of them are decent goaltenders. The Islanders, Sorokin, $8.25 million cap hit till 2032. At the time that contract signed, it looks like a bargain. He did not have a great season this year, so it doesn't look like a bargain right now. But he's going to bounce back. I'd be very surprised if Sorokin doesn't bounce back. You've got Varlamov, $2.75 million till 2027, and you've got Patrick Waugh behind the bench. So I don't think goaltending is going to be a problem for the New York Islanders. I think Sorokin and Varlamov are going to be the tandem for at least this coming season. If something disastrous happens this year with the goaltending, then sure, it could change next year. But I think for this coming season, it's definitely going to be the same. The New York Rangers, very likely to have the same tandem as well. The question mark becomes, how much is Shesterkin worth? $5.66 million cap hit for one more year, meaning he's a UFA next summer. He's going to cash in. Either the Rangers give him an absolute truckload of money, or somebody else does next July. Jonathan Quick, one more year for him. He signed that contract, of course, towards the end of the season. $1.275 million cap hit for Quick. Ottawa, Korpisalo's contract hasn't aged well so far. $4 million cap hit for him until 2028. I don't know what you do here. Forsberg's been good, but he gets hurt. $2.75 million cap hit for Forsberg for one more year. Sogard's the likeliest to end up being part of this battery tandem. He's a restricted free agent currently. I do think it would be very surprising if Staios doesn't at least explore trading Korpisalo. But again, with that contract and how long it's got to go, I don't know. And it's interesting, too, because Korpisalo, of course, was replaced in Columbus by Merzlikins, and now they've both got contracts that are, well, combined $9.4 million cap hit, and they're both contracts GMs would like to move on from. Then you've got Philadelphia, and there's an interesting situation. Carter Hart, we don't know yet whether or not those that are involved in the World Junior trial that is going to start this fall, whether or not they have to be qualified as RFAs. The assumption is they do, and in the event that Philadelphia doesn't give Carter Hart a qualifying offer, he becomes an unrestricted free agent. Fedotov, they signed for $3.275 million for 2 years. People weren't that impressed with Fedotov, but it's a small sample size, so I don't think there's any reason for concern here. Ersson, $1.45 million cap hit until 2026. He's a restricted free agent at that point as well. So the goaltending in Philly probably stays the same. They're still doing the rebuild, so I don't see any reason why Philadelphia is necessarily going to change things. Pittsburgh, Jari, $5.375 million contract till 2028. I don't see him going anywhere. Nedeljkovic is an unrestricted free agent, and so likely he probably moves on, although if he wants to stay in Pittsburgh, the Penguins will probably make it work. We shall see. San Jose, Blackwood's the one that's got a contract out of the goalies they've had at the NHL level. $2.35 million contract for one more year. Devin Cooley. Sorry. I would like to apologize to Utah fans who might be like, wait, why are they mentioning our young guy? But yeah, Devin Cooley, UFA this summer. Corona, probably the likeliest to end up being part of that tandem in San Jose. $867,500 cap hit for one more year. He's a restricted free agent after that. And after a couple of rough starts, he didn't look too bad after that. So we'll see whether or not Corona gets a chance at that job, or if San Jose goes out looking for an experienced backup to Blackwood, who very likely gets a chance to be the starter for 50, 55 games if he can stay healthy in San Jose this year. Seattle, Grubauer had a great year, $5.9 million cap hit. Looks fine with the year he had. That contract goes till 2027. Joey Decord, $1.2 million cap hit for one more year. And Drieger is UFA this summer. And based on the numbers he's been putting up for Coachella Valley in the final so far, I don't think he ends up staying in Seattle. It will be really interesting to see if Drieger, who had a $4.5 million cap hit this year, and he's had struggles after injuries, of course, setting him back. Does Drieger end up landing somewhere else? Does he just get a tryout? What's going to happen this summer? We'll see. But Grubauer and Decord, that's the tandem in Seattle. I'd be very surprised if that doesn't stay the case. For St. Louis, their tandem looks solid. Bennington, $6 million cap hit till 2027. For Hofer, a $775,000 cap hit for one more year. He's a restricted free agent after that. So that's your tandem. Hofer, I think, eventually becomes the starter. Sure, why not? Young goaltenders start out usually as pretty good backups and then end up eventually winning that starting job. So we'll see how long he's the backup. But Bennington's not relinquishing the starter's duties anytime soon. So we'll see how he ends up becoming a starter. And maybe the question becomes, where does he become a starter if Bennington keeps up his really strong play, and if Hofer continues to look like he should be getting more starts. Tampa Bay, you got Vasilevsky, no concern there, $9.5 million cap hit till 2028. He had a bit of a down year, but remember he had that long-term injury as well. I think if he, comes into training camp healthy this year and just has that full 82-game schedule experience, he'll be better. Johansson, $775,000 cap hit for him for one more year, and you know what? He gave them decent goaltending, comparatively speaking, with what they could have had with Vasilevsky being out. Alnefeldt's there if they decide to bring up a goaltender, if they decide to move on from Johansson, but I don't see any reason why they will necessarily. Toronto's going to be fascinating. So Wall looks like he's the guy, right? $766,667 cap hit for one more year, and then he's a restricted free agent. Both Jones and Samsonov are unrestricted free agents. And so Toronto is definitely in the market for a goaltender unless they bring back Samsonov or Jones. But even if they brought back Jones, I'll say they're still in the market for a goaltender. Just because of its Wall and Jones, I don't know that that's necessarily going to work. The one thing with Toronto, and I'll just say this here, sometimes the moves they make, I feel like they're just very minor moves, and that they don't really make those moves that are going to move the needle towards them necessarily winning a Stanley Cup. If they can secure a really good goaltender, a name goaltender who can also back up the fact they're a name goaltender, I think that would go a long way towards fixing some of their playoff problems. And then Utah, Vejmelka, $2.725 million cap hit for one more year. Ingram, $1.95 million cap hit for two more years. That's one of the best bargain contracts in the NHL. Villalta's a UFA, so really the goaltending in Utah is probably going to be the same as it was in Arizona at the end of the season, unless ownership decides we want to push for a playoff spot this year, and then maybe you dangle either Vejmelka or Ingram out there and bring somebody else in a subsequent deal, right? So we'll see what they do. Vancouver, it seems set, right? You've got Demko for 2 more years at $5 million, which is a huge bargain. DeSmith's a UFA. He gave Vancouver good backup duty this year. I think he won't have a problem finding another job on July the 1st. But Shilov's earned the right to be the backup goaltender. He's a restricted free agent this summer. For Vegas, you've got Hill, you've got Thompson, you've got Patera as the number 3, although Patera's a UFA. He didn't meet the required number of games for them to retain his rights, so he's a UFA. Hill, $4.9 million cap hit for one more year. Thompson is one of the best value contracts too, $766,667 cap hit for one more year for him. He's a UFA next summer though, so both of them on the last years of their contracts, and so it'll be interesting to see how things go for Vegas. Washington, Darcy Kemper, $5.25 million cap hit for 2 more years. Did not have a great year in Washington, and with where he is at this stage of his career, I don't know that a bounce back's necessarily in the works. Lindgren was very good, though. $1.1 million cap hit for 1 year. I'll mention Hunter Shepard again here, but he is 28 years of age, so it's unlikely Shepard comes up. But if Washington decides to do a quick little retool, or if they decide they want to move on from Kemper and find somebody to take that contract, we'll see what they do. But yeah, I had to get Hunter Shepard on the board. Winnipeg, Hellebuck, $8.5 million cap hit until 2031. So that's a long contract. But that's the idea of the 8-year contract, just to make sure you don't have to worry about your goaltending. Brossois, UFA, and I've already seen reports he's tied to this team and this team. Teams can't officially talk to the players until July the 1st, so I don't really get into that because there's really not a lot there. But if Winnipeg trades his rights, so his negotiating rights to another team, so you just traded a pending UFA for middle round draft pick, then we could look and see whether or not he gets signed. But Brossois could be a hot commodity this summer. He looked pretty good. But let me know your thoughts. Which goaltenders do you think move this season and which ones do you think don't? Or this offseason, and which ones don't? And what do you think the best tandem is in the NHL? And do you think that'll stay the best tandem next year? Like, I would still say that Ullmark and Swayman were probably the best tandem this season. I know the numbers aren't necessarily in their favor for being the best overall tandem, but that's where I would have them. Although Stolarz and Bobrovsky would get an honorable mention, as well as some others, I'm sure. But yeah, let me know your thoughts. Do hit like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Thank you guys so much for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.